Well, good morning, everybody. It's 11:30. We're going to get started with the pre-commission agenda. I do not have a president's report. Are there any general housekeeping items or agenda items for discussion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
I do have some questions on the agenda. And first of all, I believe it's been indicated that we're going to remove item 3 from the consent agenda. I believe that's already been requested. I'd also like to request that we remove item number 4 so that we can discuss that briefly as a commission. And then I have a couple of questions on items number 7 and 15 on the consent agenda. Both of these items, we only had one bidder, which always raises a concern in my mind. But what I'm curious about is how the bid amount that we've got compares to the same budget item for last year.
Director?
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioner McKinney, I'm going to ask Tom Audit to come up with he has that information for you.
Great. So item number 7 is the chip seal aggregate material supply. I presume it's the supplier. And then the number 15 is traffic sign material supply as well. Both of those are in the $400,000, between $400,000 and $500,000 range.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. As far as the aggregate goes, the price this year is a 3% decrease from last year's price, and there were no bidders last year.
Okay. Then where did we get our aggregate last year if there were no bidders?
Sole source.
I see. Okay. So then that would suggest that last year we were paying a premium perhaps. So how did last year compare to the year before that? Did we have a significant increase from the previous year since we were sole sourcing it?
I don't have that
I'm
currently, but
sorry,
I can certainly get that.
I apologize. I know I'm digging deep here and asking questions you're not prepared for, but
President Commissioner McKinney, last year was the first year we went out for 3/8 material that we're purchasing from other gravel pits we used to crush before, but in a pit management strategy, we're now purchasing the 3/8 material instead of crushing it ourselves, as we don't need 1/4 inch as well. So last year was the first time we went out to bid. We did not receive any bidders on that, so we went to the open market. And then this year we went out to bid again to see if there was anybody that was going to bid for this year, and we did receive one bidder, and the price was 3% less last year.
okay. So then, okay, let me then ask this question. So in other words, previously we had always produced our own 3/8 material. And so last year was the first year that we went out and purchased it from somewhere else instead of making it ourselves. Have we looked at the relative costs of buying it versus crushing it ourselves? I don't recall that we've had that discussion, but what's the relative cost of that?
We actually do receive a cost savings because with the purchasing of the material, it includes delivery to whichever site we need this material. So we actually save material of us from crushing it at our Schmidt pit and then using our own internal forces to have to haul it to another pit. So we actually see some cost savings from buying 3/8 directly and they ship it to us.
So do we have crushing equipment that is underutilized or was it needed for other actions?
Our crushing is generally, we contract the crushing out, so we don't have any crushing equipment.
Oh, I see. So making it ourselves, we were having to pay outside sources to do the crushing in the first place.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. All right, good. Thank you. That's I think that's good on that one. What
While
about,
they're up there, I have a question about this item too. If might as well catch you while you're up there. It's kind of a predictable question. We simply did not cover the two zones 2023 and 2024, mostly because of lack of employees. We couldn't get the staffing to stand up last year. And then this past year, it also was weather related. So my assumption was that we would then have a lot of leftover materials from these last two cycles to use for next year's. So how is that affected? It would be almost a significant decrease in the sheer quantity of chips that we would need simply because we have a whole bunch left over.
Vice President Gold, Commissioner Hanson, yes, we do factor that in. We look at what our current inventory is of our materials, and then we order only what's required that we need for the next coming, like this coming chip seal season. Hence why originally we were going for this year, we were looking around 25,000 tons of 3/8, and we brought it down to 14 because we had leftover material from last year.
Okay.
So we do look at those quantities, make sure we only purchase what we need.
Significantly less. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Commissioner McKinney?
And then if I may continue on, then on item number 15, again, this was for traffic sign material. We again had only one bidder. How does this bid amount compare to the previous year's expenditures on this?
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney. The unit prices for sign materials are less than last year, and they're well below the estimate that we had originally anticipated, but we may be purchasing more throughout the year depending on need. So our unit price actually went down.
Okay, so the unit price went down, but did the total amount, aggregate amount, how did it change altogether?
It's currently lower. If we find that we need to purchase more, we do have room in the agreement, but it is currently lower.
Okay, so the total amount is lower and the unit price is lower, and we have room to potentially order more.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I have two items on consent item 6 and consent item 12. I don't need them removed, but I do want some information put on the record. Consent item 6, which is a design contract for the capital project. It does reference that they'll be working with Boise State to look at their designs. Boise State, since the time we adopted a concept, Boise State has moved forward with a significant, some significant progress on facilities to actually take advantage of land on campus. They're landlocked, that would use that remnant piece of Boise Avenue, where by removing one of the lanes, it's almost going to become irrelevant. So we're going to work with Boise State. There is no reference, though, to redesigning the two intersections right now. And so I think that needs to be there in an email from Justin. That is intended to be included in the design. The intersection of Boise Avenue and Capitol and Yale and Capitol are two right-in, right-out intersections right now. And the evaluation would be, instead of two intersections, it'd be one signalized intersection, which would make that function better. And because it would be adjacent to BSU's property, there would be opportunities for Boise State to help us defer the cost of some of that. So I just want to make sure that's on the record, that is going to be considered in the design, and that we don't get down the road and say, oh, some sort of language of what you approved in December precluded us from considering that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. We will consider that request.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, we are committed to working with Boise State on that evaluation.
Great, because I think that intersection is key. The Capitol intersection is not functioning as well, largely because we have that subsequent one that is right in, right out. Consent item 2, I've already made comments last time, what is it, almost a month ago, when we were considering in work sessions on the Livable Streets performance measures. They're good. I support them. I'll vote for them. We had some good comments. There is reference within them on, LOS, which is driver performance measures, but those aren't being updated. And this is where I would like to see in the future an update to make sure that we are as clear about what LOS means as we now are about what LTS means, because we haven't really addressed LOS, and nobody really knows what that is unless you're an engineer. It should actually be level of driver comfort or level of driver convenience. It's not a safety measure quite like the LTS are. The other is to make them consistent, be an alphabetical measurement instead of a numerical measurement instead of an alphabetical one. Because I think that is much more valuable, the numerical one. So I'm really glad we're doing this. The other is that so that's the next step I hope this commission takes. The next step also is to deal with LOS on the LTS and LOS, or LDC. Maybe we could change the name to LDC, level of driver convenience. On arterials, we had, there was a discussion in the Bike Advisory Committee meeting, I think Meg was on that, showing, for example, the Eagle and Amity don't really work for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and in fact for drivers. And there's been a lot of fender benders. Because drivers don't decelerate enough. They aren't fatal head-on collisions, but something in the process didn't allow us to measure and figure out how drivers were going to approach that roundabout. And I think that is the case everywhere. Rose Hill and Oahe are great examples where we did move forward on addressing how are people going to approach the Oahe roundabout. We used some measurements to determine, okay, how do people approach those as drivers? And so incorporated both the roads approaching the roundabout or the intersection as well as the intersection itself. And so I think that is a key component to addressing livable streets performance measures in and around, especially the larger intersections, the arterials. And finally, the next thing that I hope the commission will do is move forward with the whole notion of the infrequency of crossings on arterials. And it's just simply a difference between those areas where there are gridded streets. People are used to knowing there's crossings every block. Even if you're on kind of a main road, there's a block, there's a crossing every block, versus those areas where there aren't. And that's when you obviously get the speed. And so addressing LTS on arterials based on the number of crossings is something that should be incorporated into livable streets performance measures. I'm not going to take this off the agenda because I know how hard it was to get this, 12 years ago when we were talking about level of service for pedestrians on bikes. The commission wasn't the least bit interested because they thought that was something to do with crowded sidewalks or something. And I think under the brilliance of some of our staff, you in particular, Director Head, said, no, this is just a valuable metric that we should include in our toolkit. And so to see this move forward is really good. It just needs some changes down the road. And I wanted to make these comments as part of the record so that in the future, I hope the commission incorporate some of those changes for the next iteration. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner McKinney, on item number 4, did you have questions or did you just want to move it to the regular agenda? Did you want to ask them now or future? Okay. Then over to you, Director Head.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commission. I hope you all enjoyed your Thanksgiving with your families, and we're happy to have you back with our second to last meeting of the year. So today I wanted to spend some time on a few different things. In particular, I wanted to give you a full update on our new headquarters site and how that process is going. You've been asking for some information regarding expenditures and the budget, and we have full transparency for you today on that topic. But first, wanted to recognize the fact that our State Street from 4th to 8th project is complete. This has been a big deal and has been a lot of work. The team has put a lot of effort into this, dealing with some unforeseen challenges, and we are happy to have that key arterial back open. Also wanted to say thank you to our Rake Up Boise team. Every year, Diane Roush kind of leads the charge in organizing a crew here from ACHD to participate. And this year we only had one house, and it was done in all of about 15 minutes. So you can see how big those trees were. The team was extremely efficient in getting all that done, and you see all those leaves. So it was a great time. But thank you to Diane and all those who participated here from ACHD. Also wanted to share, I happened by our traffic operations center the other day and they were installing this sign. And it's super exciting to see the progress of that building. They are working very hard. The full site is paved at this point in time. They had some pavers being installed for some of our drainage areas. And then they're working heavily on the inside of that building right there in the background for over the next number of months to finish that up. So super excited to see that progress, but it's nice to have our name on it. So today wanted to give you and focus on Meeker, give you this update so that you have all the information that staff's been dealing with. Again, as we've worked on this is we haven't done a new headquarters for 50 some odd years. So this is a new conversation for us as we work through this and remodeling a wonderful building that you all approved. So we really do appreciate the commission's vision and setting up a situation where staff can all be in one place and that we can make this investment for the next 50 years. So it really is and we'll talk a little bit about that value here at the end of this presentation. So progress to date, where are we? And really one of the goals here of this slide is so you can see all the different activities that are ongoing. We have our phase 0 was working through those initial repairs when you buy a building, right? Those things that came out in the inspection, getting the HVAC repaired. Our atrium roof had some small leaks that we were able to get repaired. The positive thing is that all those costs came in less than our inspection was anticipated there. We've worked through the removal of the furniture that was there so that it's ready for the remodel. Cleaning chairs, utilizing what we have there, and we'll talk about how we're doing that. We're also getting it set up for our security, getting it badge readers working. We have some staff working from there every single day, and also getting the architect to do the space planning. There is a lot of construction going on there, and I have some photos for you so you can see this, but we have, as of yesterday, received our building permit, our final building permit. We had an initial one that we could start demo, but for phase 1. So a lot of work is happening there. Walls coming down, the grids off the ceiling so they can do all the HVAC, working on the lighting, getting all of those things in place, fire suppression, wall installation of the modular walls. With phase 1, we were able to purchase the modular walls and the workspace furniture for both phases 1, 2, and for phases 1, 2, and 3. So that is complete. We have those, and you've already approved that purchase. Currently ongoing for phases 2 and 3, which are really going to happen simultaneously after phase 1. And phase 1, by the way, is what we need for Orchard. In order to move our staff out of our Orchard site and with that lease ending at the end of February. Phase 2 and 3 will be really the rest of the building, getting that up and running so that we can fully operate out of that building. We are in the construction plans and permitting process on that, and all of these are contracts that you've recently approved. In the future, and outside of this initial construction, we still have the discussion on what do we want to do from an auditorium perspective, the pre-commission room. We're going to phase in the conference rooms over time, so we're not planning to have every conference room up and running on day 1, but we'll bind the technology over time. Areas where we'll have collaboration spaces and furniture, finalizing what we do with the kitchen, which will be another topic we talk about a little bit later. And just as an indication of what those phases are, you can see here on the graph just kind of what areas will be covered there. So what is our spending to date? And these are items currently under contract. We have not spent all of these dollars because there's a lot of work going on. But we are under contract for each of these costs. So initial repairs to the building, getting the IT. One of the things that we found as we got into the building is that the cabling did not meet our current standards. It was a cable company, right? And they used old cable, so it was very slow. So we did one of the larger costs under the repairs, IT and security, was that. Getting that in place and getting the security for all the doors for badge access and other things. Architects and pre-construction services. So we have been able to do a lot of the work that we've done used over time. As we've looked at redesigning this headquarters, so some of the space planning, some of the needs assessment we've had, but those are the costs through. We don't anticipate any additional costs for phases 2 and 3. Those are all under contract at this point in time. So that's what you see there. The bulk majority of the construction cost was the initial purchase of those modular walls. That was about $2.5 million. The commission approved that contract, but we'll show you the benefit of doing that here in a second. But really, with the building, that's where we are through phase 1. Construction costs, with the recognition of some of those costs are going to help reduce the cost for phases 2 and 3. And then furniture, the bulk majority of that is buying the workstations for the open areas in the building. But we are reusing some things, and I'll talk about that here in a second. So, but we have some photos so you can see progress to date. So as you come in the entrance, there was a desk right there in the center for security of our team. We wanted to make sure that they had a better access to pull out of there and into a more secure place. So that has been shifted over to the side. This is under construction. They've already got some framing in place. We are reusing the front desk that is up at Orchard, or was up at Orchard because it's already been pulled off. So we are reusing those materials here at the front here. And we'll have a place for up to three staff, including some of our development services staff, so that people can walk in and get service right at the very front. And it also, as you see, that gives them a place that they can step back into what will be a copy room behind them, and materials and supplies for mailing and storage. Lots of things have been delivered, which necessitated for the second floor that they took out some windows and have this ramp dropping things off. Just some of the materials here. These are just ceiling tiles that are needed for phase 1. Lots of work happening there. These are the walls before they get put up. So all of that material has been delivered, and they are fast at work, and I'll show you that progress here in a few moments. Demolition has taken place throughout the building. So here, this was an area where there was a conference room where there will be some offices. We were not needed to make some adjustments to get things in place here, but just an example of the work that's happening there. Opening up the area so that staff has better access into the break rooms and things without having to go out and through the stairs. So this is another example. This will also be a number of flex rooms as staff will be working in an open environment. We wanted to have some quiet rooms where staff can work. You can see the changes being done from an HVAC perspective and all the people working in the building every single day. So this room is where I can show you some good progress. This photo was taken just about a week ago. This is where our inspection team will be. You can see some tracks there on the ground. Those are where the offices are going to be built out here, as they are also working on the electrical and making changes for the HVAC and those items to get it fully ready to go. And this was just yesterday. So they've already, the modular walls allow them to build that. This work started just this week, that they're able to put up the walls very quickly. They already, as of today, I got an updated photo and they already have glass up on the front. So to make these offices work well for those who are going to be there. Now, the ceiling track isn't there for all of the rest of the area. It's only over the area where they've been building. So the rest of that will be enclosed eventually once they get all the HVAC adjustments made. But there's a lot of work to do, and we really wanted you to be able to see the amount of work that's needed in order to get the building fully ready to go and working for our staff. So what have we been doing in order to save some cost? First of all, as you saw when you toured the site, and we'd love at any point in time, if you'd like to go see the site, we're happy to take you in there. You do have to wear a hard hat. They do yell at you if you don't. But there were a lot of chairs left over. There were about 700 chairs for the Franklin site, as well as for this building, for conference rooms and other needs. We're able to reuse a lot of the chairs that are there, and with the cost savings of about $400,000. As we talked to some of the furniture people, each of those chairs were worth about $1,200 a piece if you were to buy them new. So being able to reuse those chairs is a big deal. Reuse of cubicles up at Orchard. When we moved there 5 years ago, we bought furniture. We are planning to reuse that in some of the areas that are not in the open area. So that cost would be a roughly $230,000. We are looking at any of the offices that are going to be there, or the vast majority of the offices that are going to be there will be reusing office equipment that we have, furniture that we have here in this building, as well as things for conference rooms, for break rooms, etc. The estimated cost of that's roughly about $700,000. Looking at it and looking in particular at timeline and being able to get the cost done, we looked at the carpet and we're only replacing what's absolutely necessary and in kind of the common areas. Otherwise, we're retaining the carpet that was there, and has a cost of about $450,000 in savings. So altogether, you're over $1 million, well over $1 million in terms of just cost there. We're also through this process updating the light fixtures, the buttons in terms of the for the offices. Idaho Power offers a rebate for commercial remodels if you are using energy efficient things, which we think is important in this building. Of a building of this size, it does use a lot of energy, and so we're working with our architects to get that submitted for a rebate there. We're also using our staff anytime that we have the opportunity. We talked about chip seal, and there were some days that staff couldn't work. Our staff relocated and worked out a meeker in order to help with some of the cleaning and the work needed to get that building. Another example is there's some trees that were dead on the site that we needed to remove. The bid for that was about $30,000. Our crews just went in and took care of it. So we were able to. We're working hard to make sure that this is as cost effective for the public as possible, and the building is going to work well for all staff. So what is this going to cost overall? I gave a number last week or a few weeks ago of around 28 million. That's roughly what we're seeing. So using the cost that we got on phase 1 for construction, which is really the bulk majority of the remaining cost, we are estimating about $5 million. Now, that's in design now. We don't have real numbers until the design is complete and we have a better understanding of what that is. But this is the cost that we're looking at for to fully be able and up and running in that building through phase 3. So is it still a good deal? Absolutely. Commissioners, it is absolutely a good deal. When we looked at remodeling this building and expanding this to accommodate staff, the estimated cost per square foot was about $467. The cost per square foot, even with the cost that I just showed you, is about $188,000 or $188 per square foot. So that's a substantial savings in terms of reusing a building that was sitting dormant to be able to fully incorporate and bring staff in. When we had the building appraised before the purchase, it appraised at $27 million and it was purchased at 16.4. So, and with every improvement we make there, we're enhancing that value of the building. And so we really do believe that there's still a return there for the taxpayers. We're also at this point in time paying almost $500,000 a year for Orchard. So by ending that lease and moving forward, we're able to save that for the taxpayers. And really just, if we looked at that, we do believe this is a 50-year investment at least. And this building will be good for that and allow us to grow and expand over the next 50 years. If you were to lease a building of the same size using the lease numbers that we have here from Orchard, that would cost almost $350 million. Commission, you made a great deal and you're doing the right thing for the taxpayers. Even more, it will be a great deal when we're able to sell the site that we're currently in and return that back to the taxpayers too. And so just wanted to confirm that for you, that this still is a wise purchase. It's still the best thing. While we didn't really have a great idea, we used different ways to come up with the budget historically, like this is what we think we could pay for the building and whatever's left. That as we get more numbers, it's still a good deal for the public, and just wanted to confirm that for you. With that, I'll take any questions you have on the Meeker site before I move on just to what's coming up over the next few weeks.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
Director, I know we're over time, but let me just ask quickly, as far as timing is concerned, you mentioned that phase 1 is likely to be done by February of next year. What are we looking at, current estimates for phases 2, 3, or whatever?
Phases 2 and 3 we're expecting to be done next summer. So we anticipate this fiscal year to be complete with the construction of the remodel.
So the full job completely done by
To
the
get
end
everyone
of
in.
fiscal 2025.
That's the intent, yes.
Okay, so by October.
That's the current projection, yes.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Madam President, I just want to reinforce, I totally agree. I was sorting through the old files and tossing out some documents from when we had the discussions a long time ago about rebuilding on this site, significantly more even in those days. And I just want to send a lot of kudos out to the transparency that the staff, especially you, who did sort of the lead work on this research, and I really appreciate that. The other is to just put in a request if I could arrange a tour with Commissioner-elect Nielsen coming up, either with me so I can sort of tell her all the history and bore her to death, or directly with you before the new year. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. We are going to be bringing her in the near future to kind of do an orientation, and that would be a great thing to include in that as a tour of the building. We'll let you know when that is if you'd like to join us. So items coming up, next week is our last commission meeting of the year, as well as our retirement celebration for Commissioner Hanson. So that will be immediately after next week's meeting, and look forward to celebrating with you. We do have our holiday party on the 14th. If you are interested in attending, please let Stacy know. We'd love to have you join us. State and Pierce Park will have its construction kickoff on the 17th. That evening as that construction gets underway. You're already seeing the utilities doing some work there, so that's a big project to get going. We have a few other meetings here, all leading into January, when we'll have the Governor's State of the State on the 6th, and the legislative session starting, as well as the swearing-in ceremony here for our commissioners on the 8th as we get things going. With that, I'm over time, so I will end my presentation and we'll look forward to your discussion.
Thanks, Director. Well, it is 12:03, so I will call the meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in person and online, and if you'll join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. We have had items number 3 and 4 requested to be moved to the regular agenda. And if there are no other items, there's no number 3 and 4. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
I move that we move items, approve items, all the items on the consent agenda except items 3 and 4, which are being moved to the regular agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, we will move item 3 as number 1 on the regular agenda. So that's disposal of surplus property, action, results, and disposition. Request for approval, Director Head.
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. We are speaking of items at Meeker that we purchased. Within the building was a commercial kitchen, not something that ACHD utilizes. And so we went through the process to hire an auction house, and that auction was advertised here locally. It's a local company, allowing them to do an on-site tours so people could see all of this. This closed just this last Monday. So we were wrapping up some things with the memo that was in your packet. Just a few minor tweaks. There were a few items that did not sell. We just did not have that information, and the number, I think, came down just slightly as it was math, trying to do the math real fast, but we got all the information in there. But overall, the auction and the items there came in at about 13,000. 100 and something is, I think, the number. 129 was the final number, so it was just a little down from the 13,300 that we had originally estimated. The overall cost of that equipment was roughly about 140,000. So was the appraised value for that. In order for that to be sold, as it went through the process, it is up to the commission to approve allowing those to be sold prior or at a cost lower than the appraised value. Now, having things appraised is interesting because the resale value of things generally, it's unlikely that you're going to get the appraised value for items when you go through a process like this. And so one thing that we do gain in a benefit of doing this and going through this process is it is a requirement of the people to remove the items from the building. When we did the last auction, the items that didn't sell, there was a price to remove all of the desks and things that we did sell or removed after the last auction. And so if the commission so chooses, it is at your discretion to approve this. We are recommending that you approve the items. There are a few items that we'd like to retain that we believe will be useful so that we can actually wash our dishes in the building. But overall, we are recommending that you approve the sale and the results of the auction, and we'll stand for any questions.
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Director, let's see. So the estimated fair market value around 140,000. The actual bids received total about 13,000. And of course, this is kind of the second time in the last few months that we've had an auction of surplus property, and the results have been a bit disappointing. I guess first question is, let's talk about all the alternatives. Alternative 1 is to accept it. Alternative 2 is to reject this bid. And then what would we do if we did that? Would we advertise individual items instead of advertising? Because these were advertised all as a big block, weren't they? Or were they advertised individually?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, they were advertised in kind of packages. So for instance, the fridge was its own package. The fryer was its own package. There were a few things that they grouped together because they were smaller. For instance, trays, baking trays, and racks to carry them. Some of those things were advertised as one. So there were overall about 127 items, packages that were bid on. We received bids on 100.
We received bids off 107.
107. Thank you, Jennifer.
Okay. So
She's
because,
the expert here.
you know, and I'm thinking of this in terms of, for example, if you have an old car and you sell it to a scrapyard, and they sell the individual parts, of course, you get maybe $100 for the whole thing. The scrapyard, they sell out individual parts and they may sell, they may make a couple $1,000s off the whole thing. But of course, it takes them a long time to do that. And so I guess, is that the only alternative that we would have, is to offer individual items, and maybe we could get more individually for them than for selling the whole lot like this, but then it would take a lot of time. And in the meantime, we'd have to store all the stuff and so on. We'd be kind of like a junkyard, selling off used stuff and storing it, which of course is not really the business we want to be in. Is that the only option here?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is definitely one of the options. If the commission so desired, we could also donate it to charities or other groups that may use it. So, which would get us no return on investment. It would be definitely laborious to have staff. The statute requires that you go through some kind of a public auction in order to dispose. And it would require the commission to approve us doing anything for less, which is why we're here today, less than the appraised value. And so the other options would be kind of one-on-one, being a junkyard, selling it over time. We may be responsible for removal of that, which does come with the cost as well. It's not like our staff is prepared to do that kind of work, as well as then any disposal fees or other things if we were not able to sell it.
Do we know how many bidders we had altogether?
So, Commissioner, it is per lot. For example, on the espresso machine, we had 85 bids. And that one came in, that's one of the higher items. It was 950.
But that's how many bids, not how many bidders, right? You could have,
Right.
you have 2 or 3 bidders who
Yeah,
are
we don't
submitting all
know.
these
We don't know
bids.
who was,
There's
how
no
many
way for
people
us
were
to know.
bidding.
Okay.
We can find that out.
Because I guess, when I look at this, on the one hand, we have an obligation to, safeguard public money and public resources. And by purchasing this building with all this equipment in it, it now becomes a public resource. At the same time, we're not in the business of selling used property. And so that's, our job is to, move ahead as efficiently as possible. 10 cents on the dollar, which is about what we're getting for this property, seems like it's a sad, I don't know, it's a sad thing to say. Maybe we don't have much of a choice at this point. Do any of the other commissioners see that we have any other choice but to accept these bids?
Yeah,
Commissioner Hanson.
yeah, I agree with Commissioner McKinney. There's 2 things. First of all, the previous owner didn't want to go through the process that we're obligated to do. So they sort of put it on this agency. The other is the price that we offered them was clear. It did not include any of this stuff you're going to leave behind. So we inherited that opportunity to dispose of items that have no value to the agency. The other is that I've twice been to the Antiques Roadshow here in Boise, and hundreds and hundreds of people come with really valuable things. And most of us don't get on the air because we are highly disappointed when we find out the market places no value on these things. And so when the market comes in and says this really is not as valuable as you think it is, that it's kind of a wake-up call. And so while disappointed that there weren't a whole lot of people just eager to come over there and buy these, I don't think we have any other obligation but to sell, to accept the request. We went through all the processes. And actually, since this was not part of the price that we we negotiated for this building. It's all a little extra resources that we can do to offset the costs. So I don't have a problem disposing of it, but I do agree with Commissioner McKinney. It is sad to see that the market operates the way the market does.
Yeah, I agree with all of your comments. I think that the fair market value, I think, obviously doesn't necessarily reflect the reality as we're seeing as we go through this process. We do want to do right by the public, and also we're going to have to deal with this in one way or another if we don't go through this process now. So I think that we should just accept this and move forward and continue on the track we're on.
Madam President,
Commissioner Hanson.
I would move to approve the auction bids received in the disposal of surplus property.
I'll second that.
There's a,
And retain the one item indicated in the staff report.
Thank you.
does the second agree?
Yes, I second that.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the second item was formerly number 4 on the consent agenda, which is Human Resource Information System Contract Award Request for Approval. Director Hood.
Thank you, Madam President, Commission. I'm going to invite Jennifer Bingham, or Jen Bingham, up here who's our HR manager, to describe and answer your question.
Madam President, my name is Jen Bingham and I am our HR manager. And Commissioner McKinney, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding this HRIS system. It is a new system for us. Currently, we do not have a HRIS system. So a lot of our processes are done manually and through a paper process. And so with this system, it will digitalize all of our records. It will streamline our processes, and it will allow us to communicate more effectively with all of our customers.
So yes,
Commissioner
Madam President, yeah, let me just ask a few questions on this. First of all, have we quantified what is the current cost of doing the things that this system would do for us? Because I'm thinking about this in terms of what are the benefits versus what are the costs, and because the cost is fairly high, and so there's the cost benefit question, then there's the budget question, but those are two separate questions. So let's start with the costs, with how you currently do things.
Commissioner McKinney, right now, everything is done manually. So for example, if an employee makes any kind of change, whether it's a direct deposit change, the applications, whatever, they all come through a manual process. So we now have a team member that is physically entering that information into a system. They are responding to those applicants through a manual process. And so this system will allow us to automate a lot of those things so we can focus our efforts in getting in front of our employees more in terms of training and those kinds of things that we just haven't had the bandwidth to do up to this point.
What the types of the tasks that are having to be done manually right now, as opposed to automatically under this new system, how much time, in the aggregate, about how much time does that take? In other words, how much employee resources are involved in those?
So I can tell you we have one full-time employee that is dedicated to just these manual processes. Going to this type of system will not eliminate that position, but it's going to change the duties of that position. So it's more based on an HRIS type analyst position. So they become the experts in the program. And so we can better serve our customers.
So is it fair to say then that we'll, excuse me, we'll still have one full-time employee who's doing all of these things, but they'll be working with this system rather than doing it manually. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, sir. If you think of, just to give you some quantification, typically the cost with benefits of an employee is roughly around 100,000, if sometimes a little bit more, depending on salaries and things. If this system is going to cost roughly around $82,000 a year. So there is some automatic benefit in that, and allowing our staff to redirect their time and their resources into these other activities. If that
So-
gives you some quantification, if that helps.
Well, and I guess what I'm saying is this: if it's taking one full-time employee now, and it's still going to take a full-time employee after we get this system, or is it only going to take half that employee's time? Is that what's happening now? We're freeing up that employee for half their time to do something else? Is that about where it's going?
Yes.
Okay, because we currently don't pay, we're not paying 80,000 a year in license fees for the software that we're currently using, are we? You've indicated, of course, that the software we're currently using, the database, is no longer supported. And so that has to be addressed no matter what we do. Okay, then let's go to the second question, is the budget. How much have we budgeted for this? Did we budget for this, or is this a new thing that we're just coming up with now?
No, Commissioner McKinney, we actually have this money in our budget. And consequently, we have unintendedly over budgeted for this, and we didn't realize that it's coming in a lot less than what we anticipated. So we're going to have a significant savings based on the budget dollars that are there.
So how much did we budget?
275,000.
275,000 for just the first year, and presuming that it's ongoing, or what?
Correct.
So what we're spending then, it looks like, is 84 plus 80 something. So we're looking at 160,000 for the first year, and then the ongoing cost of 80 something per year.
We actually have $10,360, which is a one-time fee for the implementation. And then ongoing costs are going to be $5,980 per month for an annual amount of $71,760. And so that $71,000, that is going to be the annual amount over the next 5 years of the contract.
Okay, the numbers I'm looking at here on the page are showing an implementation cost of 84,000, about 85,000. And you're saying 15,000.
That is correct.
So the 15,000 is correct, and the 85,000 that's on my page here is not correct.
Yes, I'm sorry. The implementation cost, Commissioner McKinney, I apologize. I don't know if you have the updated staff report, was $82,120 for the annual fee. Is that the one you are showing?
Well, I show the monthly at 6210 and the implementation cost at 84,800.
Got it. So what happened is when that original summary came back, there was a line item on that summary for the ACA tracking. And when we looked at that, that is something that we do not need. And so we went back to our vendor and we asked them to remove that. So we're not paying those additional costs. So that dropped our dollar amount to $59.80 per month.
Okay, 5980. And then the implementation is not the 84,880, it's 15,000?
Yeah, it's $10,360.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, Sherry Knaus, Chief of Staff. Just to clarify, the initial cost for the first year is the normal annual subscription rate, which is about approximately $71,000, plus the $10,000 implementation fees. That is the year one cost. Year two costs will not have, and the remaining 4 years will not have that implementation fee, and then we'll be at the roughly $71,000 per year.
Okay, So then where did that 84,880 number come from?
The ACA tracking.
Was that for the tracking feature?
Yeah.
I see.
Yes,
Okay,
but
so
not-
the thing that we don't need. All right. Okay. Okay. Okay, I think that that answers my questions. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I have a
Oh, I'm
question.
sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, on year one we're paying the full amount, and then on year two, we're doing a monthly amount. Is that how that works? Okay. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I would move to approve the Human Resource Information Systems Contract Award.
Second,
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 None opposed, motion carries. Thank you. All right, that's all for the regular agenda, and that moves us to discussion items, public communications. Is there anyone in person or online that would like to address the commission?
Two people that signed in, but they did not say they wanted to.
Okay. All right, seeing none, we will adjourn and move to the post-commission agenda. We have a work session. Policy number 5104.2, residential traffic management, traffic calming draft policy review, and Mr. Justin Lucas.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Chief of Operations and Infrastructure here at the Highway District. Today, just in preparation for potential adoption next week, wanted to share all the information we have received from our partners and during the outreach effort to date related to potential changes to the residential traffic management policy 5104.2. So I did include in the packet all of the information we have received to date. I'm going to briefly go through as much of that as I can. And then take any comments, questions, proposed changes that the commission may have. And then we can prepare for next week. So one thing I did want to share, which this is at the request of the commission and in coordination with our communications department, we did create a kind of infographic summary of the process. And this was, I think, a key piece of discussion and something that we wanted to provide to the commission, as this isn't necessarily adopted into policy, but it's a summary of the policy, and it's intended to hand out to interested parties and others that have questions about how we perform this function. And this is what our communications department came up with. They did a really good job kind of outlining what we do and how we'll do it, balancing some technical information. We're trying to simplify it as much as we can. And then we can continually refine this also as we get feedback from from the public. So where have we been? What have we been up to? As you know, we've been working on this policy update for several months now. Between October 23rd, which was our last commission work session, and November 22nd, we did share the draft with all of our integrated 5-year work plan partners. We posted it on the website. We linked to all the proposed changes. And then I personally was able to go and present to the Bicycle Advisory Committee. I also presented at the Neighborhoods in the Know, which is a neighborhood kind of group meeting where we invite neighborhoods to come and listen to different topics about what's going on at ACHD. I presented to the Commercial Developers Advisory Committee, the ADA Advisory Committee, and the Pedestrian Advisory Group. So at the Commission's direction, you wanted to make sure this was shared broadly, and I can say that it was certainly shared with all of those groups. I was there. So what did we hear and what feedback did we receive? I'll be honest, it was pretty well received, especially this is focusing on the advisory groups, the BAC, the PAG, and the ADA committees. There was broad general support for the revised policy. They did like the reduced thresholds and the ACHD supported outreach process, which was a major change within the policy and one of the key things that we have discussed upgrading related to the policy. And then there was this support to focus on residents versus property owners. Many of the discussions the commission were had amongst those advisory committees also. And there was, I think, general consensus about that. In my conversation and discussion with the commercial developers, I think they were a little more tentative, had a few more concerns about the policy. I think there was some concerns that the thresholds may be a little too low, and they were, maybe thinking we should stick with the thresholds that we had before. Observations related to neighborhood contention that can be created when new facilities like this go in, which is something I know the commission is very aware of and we've talked about. But in general, I think there was a request about if there are changes like this that we want to deploy through the development process, they believe maybe a work group that includes developers and others would be appropriate, and staff, that's typically what we would do when we're changing development policy, which would be a subsequent step in all of this. And they also recognize that good design principles in development can help mitigate these types of problems. And if you design it right, hopefully the first time you won't have to come back and retrofit something. So that was a good conversation. In summary, out of the advisory group feedback, staff really didn't identify any draft changes to the policy. We felt like even, we listened, we answered questions, but we didn't really identify anything coming out of that we felt required or necessitated a change to the draft.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
I'm sorry, Justin, can we go back? I just had a quick question on the commercial developers. Traffic calming issues generally come up after a development is completed and residents are living on the streets. Those first two bullet points, then I wonder why commercial developers care about those things. What am I missing?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, it's a fair question. It's kind of interesting. I think some of the observations were more personal than they were related to their profession, especially those first two. There's just recently, ACHD did a pretty broad implementation of some speed humps across the county in many different neighborhoods. And I think some of the commercial developers may have been touched in one way or another by that and had an opinion about it. That being said, I do think there are times through the development process where an adjacent neighborhood raises concerns and wants something done. When there may be more traffic added to a certain street, this comes up, relatively often. And I think the commercial developers are glad to help facilitate some of those conversations, but there are times when I think they believe they've been asked to do things on streets outside of their specific development that go above and beyond what they feel they're responsible for. So I think some of that also came out in the conversation, if that summarizes it.
Thanks.
City and partner feedback, we sent it out to all of our city partners and school districts and BSU. I included in the packet all of the comments, very detailed, that we received, some of which were, comments directly on the PDFs. So Meridian had some comments, and I believe you received some yesterday, the final set of comments from the final Transportation Committee member that wanted to submit those. They also had a few questions about the thresholds, and they brought up the posted speed concern. We discussed this at our previous work session. Tying it to posted speed is something we have talked about. Staff believes for simplicity of implementation across the county, it's better not to do that because you have different, essentially, basic speed limits or prima facie speed limits across the county. In Meridian, it's 25. In Boise, it's 20. These are often not posted speeds is the interesting thing. You call it the posted speed, but many neighborhoods have no speed limit signs within them at all. And so our focus has always been trying to establish these thresholds rather than focus so much on posted speed, try to make them focused on what we believe is a safe speed. And that was the focus of staff's work here. So we're pretty confident with that. I think Meridian's concern was, well, at 25, if you look at some of the thresholds, and I'm glad to go through that, but some of those thresholds are pretty low, and on some of those streets in Meridian, it's likely that at a 25, and if they're qualifying at 27 or 28 miles an hour, there was some consternation about that. But not from the whole group. This was just specific people. And then a request for more definition in some of the comments about the public outreach and survey process. Yeah, once again, staff has thought quite a bit about this. We're a little hesitant as we roll this out to really get explicit in the policy about how we're going to do the public outreach. Because what we don't want to do is write it into the policy a certain way and then find out, hey, we want to tweak this, or we think doing it this way would be a little better. We want to have that flexibility, and I think the commission kind of talked about that last time. And so we're pretty comfortable with staff will facilitate the process. We establish that threshold of support at 60% in the current policy, and we say that we're going to focus on residents, not property owners. Those are the sideboards. But within that, whether we do a postcard or it's an email, we want to try a lot of different methods, to be honest. And I think that's that was basically staff's response to that comment. Concerns about transit routes and school bus routes. We were able to design traffic calming devices to accommodate those types of vehicles. And typically, especially when it comes to transit routes, those roads it would be rare to have a road that a transit vehicle goes on qualify for traffic calming. They're usually higher volume roads. Boise, you saw a note from Bree, the mayor's transportation advisor, and she just mentioned some kind of follow-on items. It wasn't really specifically related to the policy. It was more about how we're going to implement the policy, follow through, post-project review, and some things like that. The question about timing of traffic investigations was interesting, and I actually called her and talked to her about it. It's really based on workload. I mean, we don't want to commit to say, if we get a request in, we're going to be out within 2 weeks. If we get a lot of requests in, we'll stack them up, we'll have a list, but it may take a month or two for us to get through the list, depending on the volume of requests that we're receiving. And we think that's fair. And we've never really had an issue with that. We think the neighborhoods are pretty understanding. And as long as we're getting out there within a reasonable time, that's worked out. So that was the city and partner feedback. Once again, in summary, I reviewed each comment very carefully. I had conversations with city representatives. I didn't feel like there was anything in the policy that I would change based on this feedback. I think it's one of those things, but at the commission's discretion. This is just me doing my initial review of the comments. But I didn't today. I'm not recommending any changes to the policy based on the feedback from the cities and partners. So with that said, I have the policy draft here. There were a few little things. There was a couple words, a repeated sentence, and a little word change that I went ahead and made. It seemed de minimis, and so I went ahead and did that. It did not change any form or function of the policy. And then it went through legal review, and they caught one other little thing that I was able to catch, which is would be in the draft policy that would be before the commission next week. So with that, I'll be quiet and take any questions from the commissioners or any thoughts you have. Glad to make any edits or take any questions. If not, we'll be bringing the policy back, which would be by ordinance next week on your agenda. So you'll see an ordinance and the attached red line policy that incorporates all of the things that we've discussed so far.
Thank you, Justin. I want to thank you for your really excellent work on this, all of your outreach and really making this policy concise with flexibility built in. I think it is effective without being confusing or restrictive. And so I know you've worked really hard on it, and I appreciate that and appreciate your overview today. Commissioners, do you have any?
Madam
Feedback?
President, Justin,
McKinney?
just one quick question. You mentioned the 60% threshold, and I know we discussed this extensively in our previous meeting. Where has this threshold been previously?
Can I get the PowerPoint back up? I'll go ahead and go to that page just so we can all see it together. In the policy draft as it sits today, which would come before you next week, the threshold is stated right here at 60%. That was what we had initially discussed. I know there was some, do we make it lower? Do we make it higher? But I didn't receive kind of any idea, there wasn't three commissioners that directed me to do anything different, so we kept it at that level. Staff is pretty comfortable there. If you go back to the review that we did, I reviewed probably about 20 of these policies. It's pretty low threshold, although some of them have that two-phase threshold where you do a percentage of respondents and then a percentage of that. So you try to get, let's say, 75% to respond, and of the 75%, you try to achieve some sort of 50 or 60% approval rating. This is, I think, for staff, the best way to do it, because it just makes it clear you got to respond one way or the other. And if you don't respond, we would consider that a no vote. You got to respond in the affirmative. So that's kind of how we look at it.
But what has it been in the past? Didn't we
Our
previously?
current threshold is 75%.
Okay. So that is a significant change. Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Justin. Many years in the works, and I really, really appreciate this, especially the fact that it's much more concise and readable. Some engineer wrote the original policy years and years ago, long before any of us were around. And
Well, it was good work, Commissioner Hanson. We've been working the policy a long time.
it was a long, long time ago. I think that at that time, most people were thinking traffic calming is speed bumps. And that's sort of the assumption. And a lot of times the request is for speed bumps. And that's where the contention comes in. And I'm sure I can name a member of our commercial advisory committee who doesn't like speed bumps, which I don't blame him. There's a lot of us who don't like speed bumps when we need to get through quickly, including emergency vehicles. Although I do like that we finally figured out how to do speed cushions, a strange word for something made of asphalt, speed cushions so that emergency vehicles can straddle them. So that's good. But I think some of the most important language in here is a recognition that traffic calming has lots of different things, and that the handout and the communication to the person asking for, expressing concern that people are driving too fast in their neighborhood, see that there's more than just a speed hump that could go in. And in particular, because I know it takes a while to even get speed humps put in, or anything made of asphalt or concrete, having temporary features specifically mentioned, and that we have some that we can point them to. Here's some streets you can go look at. And so most of my comments have to do with sort of follow up, what would be next. And it would be really important before, as this goes into effect next year, to set up a tracking system so we know where they're coming from, in particular, what the response was. John Watson's been great, because while he does send that really long first email, which is intimidating, he often does a phone follow-up. And that's where their questions really get answered. So what is the follow-up? We have very different experiences in neighborhoods where there's these hierarchy of streets, local, collector to the arterial, where people are going fast on the arterial, especially in non-peak, turn onto the collector, no one's there, I can go fast on there, and then they turn on their local road, and that's where we tend to have problems. Versus the gridded neighborhoods where it's really hard to distinguish from collectors, locals, and arterials because they're all gridded. So that would be really helpful to determine as well, where these are coming from. It might be helpful also, and I know John does this when he has these communications, is the alternative is a more expensive process of asking your city to hire more police officers to come and enforce the speed limit. And so that's always the balance. And even though we don't do the enforcement, I think part of our communication back to folks through both the handout and the personal communication is really good, so that communication gets back to the city. Our data that we collect goes right back to the city. Look, we're getting these requests in these neighborhoods. Whether they, in the interim, can send, it's the least popular thing for police officers based on their training to go do is go ticket speeders in the neighborhood. So those are my comments on this. There needs to be, because you mentioned it earlier, they don't qualify for this policy, and that's the arterials. That's where fatalities have occurred. They've occurred, especially at intersections on arterials, people turning off of arterials. They're trying to get to that light. To the extent speed is controlled, it's controlled by the timing of the lights. And the flip side, of course, and we've seen the fatalities as a result, drivers are looking at that light. It's a stale green. They are stepping on it. They're turning left. Boom, someone's in the crosswalk. So those are the, and part of it is that they were speeding. What is the process for doing this? And so I really do think there needs to be something to be done with respect to those places where the fatalities have occurred on the arterials with respect to speed management. Because this policy only speaks to local and collector roads. So those are my comments. And I hope that there's some follow-up.
Well, thank you very much, commissioners, for your comments today. I just want to mention, and thank you, Commissioner Hanson, for recognizing the wonderful staff that works on this. It really is a hands-on approach, lots of communication directly with citizens. And it is, it's a lot of work to work through this process. And we're hopeful that this revised policy will continue the success we've had in this area and hopefully resolve some of the lingering concerns. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we are done for today and we'll see you all next week.